Thank you very much, first of all, for having us. As I said to you before, I was following the work of Europeana Pro education community, and I found this very inspiring. In the last years, I saw courses that you did with teachers and also competitions with teachers. And for me, you are a pioneer in getting directly in touch with the schools in order to long-term collaborate with them and also to learn about their needs. This is exactly what we are also doing together with Nicola. Nicola is very important in this process because she makes a long-term collaboration with us and also with the commitment to really meet up once a week with us, which is difficult for a school teacher, you know how busy they are. And that helped so much to really make good progress and to interact and also to learn from each other, because this is a really important thing for us. Now that I see what is going on in the classroom, everything is new to me, and I learn about the practical background. And also that the digital application is not standalone, but it should be included into workshop concept that is just as important. So yeah, this is a very good learning journey for all of us. And also I want to thank the audience for coming today. I see that we have very international guests. I'm interested also in your experience, and what we are developing is open source. So maybe there is a possibility to exchange or to get into common projects together, who knows? So first I will share my presentation so we see some pictures. So our title is Cultural Heritage for the Classroom, because this is the possibility AR gives us to bring our objects inside the classroom. And we hope that the children understand that they have an ownership of them. So the children, the pupils, the students, they own the cultural heritage. And we hope they build a long-term relationship with them. And the other title, as I already said, we want to understand the real needs of schools, because a lot of museums, they do very intricate and good and thought through educational programs, but they don't really talk to the teachers. And so it's something that maybe can be included into the educational everyday life, maybe in the end of the school year, when everything is finished or is not, the teachers are less busy. But what we want is really to become part of the schedule. So first I want to give you a little introduction into our museum. So we're the German Maritime Museum. Our topics are all things related to sea and to ships. We're in Bremerhaven, which is a very important harbor town in Germany. And it used to be the German harbor from which you departed for the New World. So we had a huge amount of immigrants that left Germany for the US that just departed from here. Still, the research we do is everything that is related to maritime topics and social topics at the same time. So we want to research the relationship from man and the sea. And examples would be environmental subjects or the hierarchy on cruise ships. We have an ongoing project about that, which is very interesting. All the people that came to Germany in the 70s from a lot of southern countries in order to help building ships and how they integrated in a still very conservative society. So these are examples for what we do. We are one of 8 research museums of the Leibniz research community. Therefore, we want this research to be part of our outreach programs. It becomes part of exhibitions. It becomes part of the pedagogical work of the museum. And this is sometimes a really breathtaking process, because you have, on the one side, you have the scientists that have a lot of needs of being precise, of being very detailed. And in the other side, you have the students of Nicola, for example, that are 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and they have to understand that, and they have to be interested in that. And so we have to enormously change the way how we talk about the things, and still we want to give fresh and interesting results. Like we can say this, we found out about this 1 month ago. And then it's presented on an international conference, and it's also presented in the classroom. So this is the ideal for us. And therefore, we try to be very participatory in the way that we deal with not only schools, with visitors, also with the city itself. Bremerhaven underwent a lot of changes, as many other harbor towns. So we had the shipbuilding industry, seafaring industry, and these things are going down, and we became, which is interesting, a city of science, of a lot of science institutes are here, and we want the citizens to participate in that. So we have an interactive map project and this kind of things. So this is a little bit the background of what we're doing. And what is really new in our museum is the Digitization Department. So it exists since 2020, but 2 years for our museum is really new. It was a new infrastructure, and in the beginning we were not quite sure how the infrastructure would interact, or how we could work together with the colleagues and with the city. And it turned out that just by being present in a museum, we could help the digital change process to go further. And now the colleagues also from other departments have really learned how to integrate digital things into the everyday work. And we do a lot of experimentation by just using a QR code in a website, for example, and trying out how to make a good audio guide, not first of all contacting an agency, but trying out ourselves, learning from it. And so it becomes part of our everyday life. And of course, before I started writing this presentation, I thought, what could be interesting for you? So we will first of all talk about our 3D application that we develop in a museum. And of course, a lot of museums develop 3D applications. But the thing is that we do all of this development process in-house, which is a little bit different. And we have a designer, Dennis Hoffmann, and a programmer that is specialized in this web-based programming, Luca Junge, who are there all the time to interact, to discuss. And this makes the way that we develop very different. So if we find out now that we do the prototype testing with Nicola, that we should improve on something, we can try it out the next day. We say, okay, the button is not good here, or the text should be longer, shorter. Or the school children don't find a button. It's not like when you work with an agency and maybe they give you one other time when they will change something and you have to know right now, but we can further develop that over the course of maybe a year, and then see where we are getting, where we're heading for. And another thing that was really, really useful for us was the possibility to learn from each other. So of course, I told you already, we're learning from schools. So it's interesting to go in the classrooms and to see this world. And as a museum, normally you don't see them. You see the students come to you, but this is different. This is excursion day. But then you go to them, and this is an interesting exchange. But it's also very interesting to work with a designer that has worked for agencies or for the industry before, and how he differently organizes projects. When he came, he complained that when he worked in the industry, he never had the possibility to talk with the clients directly. And he said, now I want to talk with everybody in the museum. And I said, great, we will do that. And so he implemented a workshop methodology for that. And also something that has changed, because you can imagine in a scientific museum, there are also hierarchies. Who has a PhD, who doesn't have a PhD? And automatically the director will talk first, which is also okay because she gives the guidelines. But if you have a creative workshop with a whiteboard, these things go back a little bit in the background because everybody's writing ideas, everybody is telling which ideas they find good and interesting. And so you have a more democratic approach to things. And it turns out that everybody likes that a lot. And my first worries were that this would take too much time, because if everybody talks, it might take a lot of time. And it turned out it's much quicker because everybody says directly what they think. Everybody can protest directly. And it's 10 times as quick as sending each other Word documents and putting comments in them. And do you have the newest version of that? And somebody has rewritten the rule thing and you don't know where you departed from. And the nice thing also is, and I will show you this later, that we have these whiteboards in the internet that document the whole process of development, and we can go back to them. They're like a little archive of what we did. So on the slide that I show you right now, you see our museum buildings, or some of our museum buildings. There's a big word, Wandel, in German. This means change. So the museum is undergoing some changes. Our department is a change, but also we are renovating some of the buildings right now, and we're doing new exhibitions, which is a good chance for us as a digitization team to be very visible. Because if you don't have so many physical rooms, then you need to fill the virtual world with data. And you see our most important exhibition or object in the exhibition is a ship from 1380, a cock, a merchant ship. And we do also a lot of educational programs built around that, because it has also to do a lot with the local identity of trade and of sea-related life. And we have, you see this in the last picture on the right side. This is our museum harbor with the historical ships, lightships, and we have a submarine that is very liked also by our younger visitors. So I bring you our digitization team, because as I already mentioned, digitization is very much a team sport. So nobody can do that alone. And I know that there are people that have a lot of abilities, like maybe programming, cultural heritage, and also being curators. But it's still nice if you have people from different backgrounds as well, because they bring completely different perspectives, and they're experts for something, and you learn how to talk to each other. So we have a photographer, of course. She also does digitization of flat objects like maps. We have a huge collection of sea maps. We have our interaction designer, our programmer. We have a digital archivist that has the task to get research data from all the scientists, which is very difficult because people want to do research. They don't want to hand over their data in a perfect form. And then we have our new professor that works in University of Oldenburg, and he's a media scientist. So he likes to also to interact with society, to talk about themes that currently are important for society. And he gives input to us, we give input to him. And so we have this relationship with university, which is also kind of interesting for us. My position as a digital curator was created because the museum thought very wisely, now we have this infrastructure, how can we make this infrastructure to become part of the museum? So they said, as a counterpart for the curators of the physical exhibition, we want a digital curator. And I didn't quite know how this functions, how this would function, because the curators already did some digital formats. And of course, I need from them to have information, but it turned out that it works really, really well. So we learned how to share, and I have extremely nice colleagues, and we mostly do things together right now. So I'm part of different projects. The digitization team has their own project, like the app project. And we are always there to talk for the house. We build some also digital infrastructures for the house, like and multimedia guide, and so things you can reuse. And we try to be competent in things like image rights or inclusion. Inclusion in the museum is also a very difficult theme, very interesting one, also digitally, or also the long-term availability of our digital formats, because they very often vanish after some years out of the internet. So you have the impression that everything stays forever in the internet if you post a holiday picture of yourself, for example. But sadly, a lot of very thought through and well-made museum applications have completely vanished. Because if I talk to an agency, they give me 3 to 4 years for a project until it won't work anymore well. And then there's the question, do you want to put more money into it to function again? And this is often something that museums decide against. So all the very interesting topics, they just also vanish. You cannot reach them anymore. And from a exhibition, at least you have a catalog. So this is also one of the tasks we have. And also the reason that we make our application open source, because then it can be rewritten, reused by others. And I always hope that we can build a small community of people maybe using this in the future, rebuilding it, and making it maybe even more interesting, giving it more features. So this is the possibility that you have with open source. Oh, I see somebody wants to enter. Since 2020, we also have built our own 3D digitization. We digitize at the moment small and medium-sized objects. We're not able yet to digitize or make 3D models of our big museum ships. We try to learn that, but we've learned quite a lot during the last years. And that is, for example, how to digitize objects that have a shiny surface, that you have a lot of reflection, or ship models that have very intricate and fine structures that the scanner can hardly grasp. And we found workarounds for that. Now we have been contacted by a museum from Berlin, and they ask us how we do those things. So this is also a very nice exchange. What do we use our 3D models for? We include them in digital exhibitions, as you can see on the right side in the upper picture. This was part of a colonial project. We have a lot of objects in the museum from a colonial background, and we are researching them. And we also wanted to give people the possibility to write their own stories about them, because it's not us that we are the only people that can write a story, especially if it's from another culture. And so it's called open histories. And to make them really accessible over the internet, it helped a lot to have not only 3D objects, but also our own 3D viewer to make them available. We have a research project that's called Digital Materialities, because our, let's say, founder of this center, Dennis Niewert, he's also a media scientist, and he always was confronted with the reproach that a 3D model is something virtual, and it doesn't have materiality, so it is of a lesser worth. And he found out how to give materiality to 3D objects by X-raying them. And if you X-ray them, you learn a lot about the material of that. And it turned out not only to be like an idea for a media scientist, but also the visitors love that, because they love to look at the X-rays and to guess what it is and to see what is inside of it. So that's a project that we have for 3 years at our house, together with Bremen University and another Leibniz Institute that is specialized on learning research, or on educational research. At the moment, we prepare objects for a hackathon, which also means to digitally take them apart so you can animate them. And my colleague Dennis Hoffman also makes some 3D models of warships that have been digitized underwater, because we have a project also about weapons and warships in the Northern Sea that are not very well researched, and the museum deals with them in order to find out how to get them out of the water, or to little bit mitigate the impact they have on the environment that is really awful. So you see, we are quite active, and being active and being able to take every object of the collection, make it a 3D model, it makes us very flexible. And then we thought, okay, our application should be the same flexible. So we want to be able, if we are contacted by one of our research projects, that they want to become part of the application. And they say, for example, we have a compass that we think would be very suitable to show what we're doing to a classroom. Then we can scan that, and then we want it to be online in the moment it is finished. And for that reason, we decided against a native app that you have to install on your phone, but for a web application. So what is a web application? It's like a website that's optimized for the web. And it also can do things that a website normally doesn't do, like access your camera on the mobile phone. So you can have augmented reality functionalities. And now you get the first view of our application. On the left side, you see what happens when you open it on a desktop device. Then you have a different layout, but it just works exactly the same. And if you open it on a mobile device, you get the picture on the right side. And also this makes it easier sometimes to show our project, or to use that maybe in a classroom. What we will change is now both types or both ways to look at it have the same layout, and the next task for the programmer is to give a different layout for the desktop devices, because it's not quite ideal, but as you see, it's working. So then we had, after we decided for this web application, we had to decide make first decisions about other things. What I also should mention, a web application also has a disadvantage if you want to work with augmented reality. And that is Apple devices don't allow to access the camera for a web application. And this at the moment is a disadvantage for us, because you have the full usability of the app, but the only thing that you don't have is the AR function. So you can look at the objects and see them in a 3D viewer. You can open annotations, all the things that are there, but this is not possible yet, because Apple devices only allow you to access the camera if you write a native app that has to be installed on the phone. And we thought about that, but we decided against it because it's against our philosophy. We want the things to be open, to be easy accessible, and we don't want that people or visitors that open the application, or pupils or students in schools, to have to download something huge on their phone. It's a real problem in accessibility also, because you might not have the data package to download it right away. With our application, you can just scan a QR code and it's there, and you can have a look at it. And yesterday we made our test in a classroom, and I think there were 25 pupils and everybody could open it. And it was just on their phones, and they looked at it and they were surprised, and they said, what is that? And started engaging. So we will not do Apple the favor to develop a native app for them. I hope they come around. There were some regulations, competition regulations made by the European Union, I think in the beginning of this year, that told them that they have to allow other web browsers on Apple devices. So that sounds strange, because you can have install a lot of different browsers, but those all work with a Safari engine. So they are not really Chrome browsers. They're just a Chrome surface on a Safari engine. And European Union said that this is not okay according to competition laws. And if they take the functionalities of other web browsers, maybe our app finally will have AR function on Apple devices. So we're waiting for that. Small museum and big corporation, but we will see. So the next decision that we had to do was if we want to use image tracking or planner tracking. So these are two technically different things. So with image tracking, you have a database on your phone, and you save an image, and you tell your phone, so the programming, if you see this image in your camera picture, open a 3D model or open some text. And we tried this with a web application, but we were not so happy. Especially as we work with small objects, the tracking was never 100% perfect. And then the biggest wish of the colleagues was to see the ships in action, to see how they move, to see how they are on the surface of the ocean, and to have some movement, something actually giving an idea how these ships work in their natural environment. And you cannot do that with image tracking because the object that you're augmenting, like in the app of the Northwestern Museum, stays stable. So also the image that you're projecting on that also remains stable. And an alternative is planner tracking. With planner tracking, the mobile phone recognizes a surface, and this surface is made available digitally. And on this surface, you can then pin a 3D object. And this 3D object can be animated freely, and you can walk around, and it gives you this nice idea that the heritage object is actually inside your room. So it comes to you. And what we also realized is that if we do that, we can make the full functionality of the app available outside the museum. And this was the first moment when we thought, what can we do with that? Because with image tracking, you would also have to move the object that you're projecting the image to the place where the user is, like in the app of Northwestern Museum, it only works inside the museum. Otherwise, you should take the mummy and carry it somewhere else. Whereas in the BBC example on the right side, you really can bring the heritage to your users. So how does planner tracking work for us? So I brought you 3 things here. The first is a QR code. If you want, you can try it out. So yesterday it worked really nicely in the classroom. It's still a prototype, keep in mind, but we were really happy about the result yesterday. And then I brought you a video. The video is quite short because I didn't want it to be too huge for the presentation to have any problem. As you saw, you can do the surface tracking. You see this white ring. Then you position the object on it, and then you can start the animation. And this has also possibilities if you want to make nice photographs with it. So you can position that on your hand, for example, and you have the object inside your hand. And what I really like is that you have a storm here in your living room, and it starts also raining. So then the question was, what would be the storytelling approach for our application? So we talked to the education department first of all. And of course, we had to decide who is our target group. And target groups for 3D applications, they're very suited for a younger audience. So we thought directly about younger visitors and students. And we are not the only people that have this association. So, for example, there was the Cult app, which was an application from the European Erasmus Plus program, that aimed to get young people to engage with cultural heritage. And I think which was quite successful. And then there is a study published in 2018 by Pierre Beckendorf, Caroline Scals, and Istu Setya. And they also found out that young people are more motivated to interact with cultural heritage when technology is involved. And they made an augmented reality app for the Roman city of Leicester, and they found that this attracted children. No, they made this application, sorry, for the Roman city of Leicester, and another research group, Claudia Tom Dieck and Timothy Young, they were comparing different cultural heritage apps, and they found that they can be the reason why children want to visit a museum in the first place. So they're really motivated by technology to interact with cultural heritage. And there's one disclaimer that AR can, at the moment, it is losing its novelty character. So it's not enough to put just a 3D model inside an application, because children are used to that. But it has also, from the storytelling approach, to address them, to be interesting for them. And there was another study published in 2019 by the Swiss Archaeological Park of Augusta Raurica, and they found out that the digital immigrants, so let's say the parents' generation, was fascinated by just seeing 3D objects, and they rated the application very high. And the digital natives, they had a lot of demands. They were not really happy with the design of the application. So this is really interesting that we have a generation shift, like with Facebook, that is going on with this application. So this is a really high, how to say, demand for a museum to keep up with. And we will have to keep up with other agencies or other app developers also for the next years. So this is something that we have to monitor and to improve on, and to continuously work on our code. So we wanted to give information about the objects in the application. Of course, what you would do is making annotations, and this is really nice because you can guide your users. You can show them which features are really interesting in the app. They can have a closer look at them, and then they get information about these points of interest. And we decided, of course, for an animation that always should have an emotional language that should address users emotionally and should contextualize the objects. So therefore, I showed you before how the ship is in my living room, and it is fighting a storm, because this is a very special ship. It's a light ship. That was a ship that had a function of a light tower, but on sea. So it would guide ships, and it would show the position in which the ships were, because the lightning tower contains some Morse code in a way. So it rotates in a certain velocity, and so you could find out which lightship that is, where is my position. And that meant that these ships absolutely could never leave their position, even in a very heavy storm, and they had to stay. And it was heroic work to be there and to be far from your family for a lot of time, but not going to interesting or exotic countries, but you had to stay in this place that could also be very dangerous with rocks nearby. And I read a very nice account from the 19th century that even people that were mariners all their life, and they would never get seasick anymore. On a light ship, you could become seasick. So here you see what happens if you click on the annotations. So you have the text field that's opening. And we made sure that the language is suitable for the students of Nicola. So she did some rewriting, which was very helpful. So now that we decided that we would like to work with young visitors or with students, and that we would like to work with the application outside the museum, so go to the classroom, it was that was a new use case for us. And the first thing that we did was to inform ourselves about some studies. And we learned that there's already some research going on. So it was a particularly fascinating process to develop this second use case. And yeah, we found out what augmented reality can bring in order to enhance learning motivation or to make things more graspable for students. A 2017 meta-study by Murat and Gökçe Akçayır evaluated 68 publications already published at that time, and half of which directly confirmed that AR has a positive impact on learning. And a more recent study by F. Nikita and C. I. Reziano from 2019, and a dissertation by Daniele Agostini that was submitted in the same year also supports this relationship. So this relationship has been firmly established. Students remember and understand better what they learn when interactive 3D models are available to them. Which is something that you can understand very intuitively. If you have a 3D model, you're able to turn it, you can interact with it, you can see it from all sides, and this has the effect that you look at it more closely and you can better understand the object as a whole. According to F. Nikita and C.I. Reziano, augmented realities works very well for learning and for learning motivation and for remembering things, because it has this potential for emotional immersion. So learning something in an emotional way, especially in a positive emotional way, helps to remembering things. And entertainment and empathy generated by an engaging AR application can promote understanding and reflection on the context of artifacts, was what they found. So you see their graphics on the right side. So by the emotional immersion, things are made clear to the pupils, also seem to be more important, and so they are remembered better, and it had a result that could be measured. And this stimulus response research method is normally used in the research of commercials. So they find out if the commercials really have an impact on people that see them. And here it was used in the testing of a cultural heritage app. So it's no surprise that schools and universities are increasingly interested in augmented reality for teaching. Harvard University's library has recently launched a service that creates 3D models on demand for classroom use. And there's a 2020 study of virtual and augmented reality services as an industry that found that the second largest growth in apps is expected to be in the education sector. So there is really some movement going on. And a 2016 report by Goldman Sachs expects that the use of augmented and virtual reality in the US will more than double between 2020 and 2025. I don't know how accurate this turned out to be, but you see there are two kind of market researchers that say there will be a big increase. So 3D applications will end up in the classroom more and more often. And on the right side, you see a quick research that I made in the App Store, and there are quite a lot of 3D applications for a lot of topics like health and mathematics and physics, where you can open 3D models on your on your desk. Education institutes make a very informed and well-structured contribution already for this trend. So, for example, Tallinn University has developed the concept of an Edu Lab with Estonian schools and the University of Tallinn, and they created together a living lab with teachers and researchers. And Loughborough University has developed a 3D workbook in co-creation with schools. But I see museums at the forefront regarding the augmented reality apps, because they have the experience in telling engaging stories about objects. So I think that we are so used in showing our exhibits in guided tours, and we should also be able to tell interesting stories about them when we design a 3D app. And we also provide a physical space in which cultural heritage objects are displayed in context. So there's also a possibility that Nicola Brevka, I think, will mention later, that we combine our app that comes to the classroom and brings heritage to the classroom. After that, the students come to our museum and see the real object. And this is quite an interesting concept, because our curators often say, if you bring the things online, nobody will come to the museum and look at them, and that is also not true. So I can cite another study from Geneviève Alelis, Anja Popovic, and Chi Xiang Ang from the year 2015, and they found that it's even the opposite. So if you familiarize yourself with an object, then you want to see it in real life. It diminishes the threshold fear, also maybe to go to a museum. And everybody, of course, wants to see a Mona Lisa. So our objects are not as famous yet, but it can really be an incentive to go and to see this ship model that somebody knows from the app, and not only see it, but also have the feeling this is my ship model because I know it. I have interacted with that already. So everything, of course, has to be tested and has to be also discussed with the target group, because, as I mentioned before, the app also must be engaging. It must have the right language for our target group. And otherwise you get answers like, if you ask them, who do you think wants to use that? I think my mother wants to use that. This is not a good answer. So we have to try to keep up to date, which is also challenging. There are other disadvantages that sometimes are mentioned, like technical difficulties that the children might have, or Wi-Fi that is not strong enough, or that it could be distraction instead of engage the pupils. And these are things that a good app design can solve actually. For example, we managed to compress our objects, our 3D models, and the animation to 8 megabyte. This is you cannot compress them further because otherwise the models wouldn't be nice to look at anymore, or also to enlarge, which you can do with the application, but 8 megabyte is okay. So, but this was quite also a research process, and I'm always fascinated by the research that our ITs are doing, because they also do their kind of research, and they name to me a lot of different formats, and the GLTF formats did it for them. So this worked quite nice, and also the app design should be easy and intuitive to understand. So we did a test yesterday, and we were happy that the students found everything. Sometimes they had to think twice. So now we will look at the notes we made and decide where we maybe have to simplify things, or to make them more clear, or to put inside a little graphics, and then we can test them again. And then it also shouldn't be distraction, but it should be engaging and very well suited to them. So in the beginning of this year, we made a workshop, and to the workshop we were invited by our education team, that they have a teachers advisory board now for several years, that we meet up with the teachers 4 times a year and show them our new developments, and also ask them to test what the museum did. It can be all kind of materials, like special catalogs for young visitors, or text that we wrote, or YouTube videos. We did a lot of YouTube videos, and they give very honest criticism, and also that is very helpful. And now we're working together with the school, school department of the city, and talk to new teachers, make workshops to new teachers, and are part of the education of these new teachers, with the hope that they will become partners of the museum, visit us with their students, and or co-develop something with us. So we were in this we did this first workshop, and we asked those young teachers about advantages and disadvantages that they could imagine when using AI in the classroom. They had a very positive expectation about the learning success, which is also, as we saw, backed up by the students. And they thought that it was a good way to present contents in an exciting and lively way, because not all students respond very well to frontal education. And an application gives them a new sensory way to interact with information, and also lets them discover things on their own. So you could target with that students that maybe are difficult to reach. So we have to try that out. But I found that was an interesting thought. And of course, they had all the other fears that I already mentioned. Will there be technical difficulties? How will the content be prepared? And this is what we want to, but we're now at the moment addressing with the co-creation process. So what did we do then? I already told you about our whiteboards. Dennis Hoffman created a workshop methodology where we do not start directly by creating ideas and doing brainstorming, but the first thing is to find a common ground. What are our goals? What do we want to achieve? What could also be the problems during such a project? And this is now that I am part of a lot of project teams in the museum, I understood how wise that is, because if somebody says from the beginning, I might have a problem with time, or I might have a problem to understand technical things, this really helps you to understand the viewpoint of your project teams. And the first thing we did afterwards was not to be creative again, just by ourselves, but to think about for whom are we creating. So we follow a goal-orientated design process in which you ask yourself the question, what are the needs of your target group and how can you fulfill this need? And so he developed a questionnaire that Nicola did with her students, and we found out what motivates the students, how is their everyday life, and what do they want or expect about their school, their experience in school. And it turns out that they are very, very social motivated. So the most important for them is their circle of friends. They want to collaborate with them, but they also want to compete with them, which is interesting, which is something that Nicola also confirmed to us. So she can very successfully repeat things she has taught them by making a quiz in the end of the lesson. So they love to compete in groups against each other. And another wish they had was to have some better academic progress by being accompanied by teachers or by being shown things by teachers. Teachers were very important for them. They also named them as their their examples. And this is also something that the app can do. So if the pupils or the students work on the tasks inside the application, a teacher can come over and give them some advice how to be more successful in solving the task at hand. So what did we do? Of course, we had to develop a quiz, and we already have the annotations in the application. So we turned the annotations into a quiz. So if you activate the button on the right upper side, the symbols that symbol different topics change into the symbols that you see on the left side. So you have a question mark. The question mark is the next question that you have to answer.
Isabella,
Yeah.
sorry for interrupting you, but we are just 7 minutes to
Oh my
finalize
God.
the session. It's a pleasure to listen to you. It's a thorough research what you've done, but I'm just afraid if Nicola will have the time to also.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Fine. So just to let you know. So please go ahead.
Oh my God. So I will show you a video of the quiz. And we thought it was a nice thing that it has exactly the same layout, and it also comments the 3D object. So the quiz does it as well as the annotations. So I will skip that because it's other topics. And I give you a short wrap up. For us, it was a great learning opportunity to work with Nicola. And it also showed us that we can, if we exchange with schools, if we listen to them, we can really create something that is valuable, that is useful. And now we are learning how the application can function best inside the lessons. So this is Nicola's part, and I'm very I'm very interested how what she will do. And the other thing is, of course, we have everything that you saw is available as open source code, and maybe this will give us some possibility to co-create maybe in other with other stakeholders as well, or maybe with you, or I want to invite you into this project if you're interested. So, Nicola.
Yes, thanks. Try to hurry a little. My name is Nicola, and I work as a teacher at a high school. Our school is characterized by diversity, and then doesn't always make teaching easy. That's why cooperations are a great help. Museums and schools may be different in many ways, but there is a common base. Both institutions have an educational mission, which can also be understood as a socio-political mission. Both must evolve with society in the long term, and both places are about imparting knowledge. It's about the common goal of showing all children the diversity of a museum. Isabella, you can continue the... Yes, thanks. Especially through such collaborative project, it means exciting new objects to look at, new methods, but also knowledge, especially from the students. A successful cooperative project requires not only passion and commitment on the part of the teachers and the museum staff, but also a connection to the real world in terms of content. Students are increasingly working with cell phones and iPads in class. That's why AR is very well suited for the classes. And this playful content stimulates a new engagement with the content, which makes the children more motivated and improves their media skills, which are becoming more and more important in the digital world. For me, the cooperation with the museum is very valuable. Collaboration with the museum creates a creative learning atmosphere that opens new ways for children to access educational content. I have gained deep insights into the institution. There are many experts with different knowledge working in the museum. Especially for me as a teacher, it's better to involve experts. I got informations that you can't find on the internet, especially about ships. I hadn't much knowledge so far. And these informations are very supportive and helpful for me. The collaboration also has a long-term impact on school. The AR app can be used at any time, and I can use it in any school subject. The possibilities of museums have changed, and also the idea of learning is different than before. Learning should be more fun and not make tired. AR as a digital museum has great potential for imparting knowledge in the classroom. It can usefully complement or enhance traditional teaching, and it also allows teachers and students to see unknown places or other dimensions. Learning material that the students work out themselves is better than things that are only heard. In addition, AR can make complex things a little bit easier to understand than a text could. And this understanding also leads to higher learning performance. Yes, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much that you engaged with us with our presentation for already 3/4 of an hour. And now that we have talked so much, it would be great to hear from you if you have any questions or if you have experience that you want to share. Mentimeter, I want to do if we have time left, because I think it's better to interact now directly, that we have the possibility to do so.
I'm afraid, because we have a very tight program, we need to close in a couple of minutes. So
okay.
I would invite you both, because I think this is a great example of how research-based, practice-oriented has been your experience. It's been a pleasure to listen to how you build a complete digital strategy for the museum. From 2020, I had myself a lot of questions, like this happened because of the COVID, or this was something in the plan of the museum. So I'm sure that the audience also has a lot of questions, but unfortunately we don't have now. Thank you very much to everyone, and see you soon.